Guppies to groupers. Tropical and marine fish in the home aquarium. Your host, Paul Speece.
You know, generally, when we talk about keeping fish, we think in terms of freshwater tropicals, saltwater tropicals, like we've been looking at here over the opening. There's a completely other side of the coin to this, and that's the keeping of the cold water fish. Both cold water marine, and sometime in the future we'll take a look at some of those, and the keeping of freshwater, cold water fish. Now, the guy who keeps these fish, he doesn't call them freshwater, cold water fish. He says, I'm keeping natives, keeping the native fish. And there's an organization, just like we've got cichlid organizations, we've got killie groups. There's a North American Native Fish Association. Sometime later in the program, I'm going to give you that address. You can contact them in case you fall in love with what we're looking at here. So send Johnny out for a paper and pencil, and you'll be ready for that. Now, you might say to yourself, how did we get involved with native fish on guppies to groupers? Well, that's simple. We feel that our charter here, our bag, is to bring to you every phase of the aquarium keeping hobby, every phase of it. If we've got new equipment, new philosophy, new fish, beautiful fish, we want to get them to you. And of course, that's why we're having that big fish show here in the fall, the exhibition, to get those beautiful fish here. Now, the other side of the coin to that is that I want to start collecting information. And I've been doing a lot of that. Right now, I want to find out an answer to a rather simple question for a different reason. I'll let you in on that sometime in the future. I would like to know what the most popular tropical fish in America is. So I'm asking everybody who's watching the show, drop me a line. I want to know your first preference and your second one. And if the family's watching and there's 4 of you, 4 entries on each piece of paper. Send it in. I got to accumulate some information. Got another idea. I know another guy who's trying to accumulate some information. That's your program director at your public TV station. He's trying to figure out who watches what show. So don't send that to me. Send it to the station you're watching, care of Guppies the Groupers. It'll get to me, but that'll help him measure some things too. Now, on the Guppies the Groupers show, one thing we're definitely trying to do is we're trying to get new interest into this hobby. And that's working. And I got a letter here that I got to read you that just got here the other day. This is a letter about Guppies the Groupers, but it also mentioned 10 or 12 programs that this couple in Fort Wayne watched on their public TV station. And they were talking about how much they enjoyed all of them. And they also sent in their renewal for $75, and that's the lifeblood of the station, you know. Don't let that slide by. She says, Guppies the Groupers, my husband so enjoyed this program over the holidays, he tried to set up our old 29-gallon tank, which hadn't been used for 15 years. You know what that's like, right? Runs right out the bottom. When this was impossible, he went out and bought a new 29-gallon tank with all the accessories and for all the fish. And she lists a whole bunch of fish they kept. Then he saw beautiful guppies, and he bought another 20, which was supposed to sit on the bottom of the 29 stand, but didn't fit, and so forth. She says, in all, Mr. Speece has cost us over $500, but it's all been worth it in the relaxation we receive from the same. That's what we're doing on Guppies the Groupers. We're creating interest in the hobby, and any facet of it becomes fair game. So today, native fish of North America. So let's take a look at some of these. Now, you know, you've seen native fish. It's nothing new to you. You just never thought of keeping them. You saw the minnows, you saw the sunfish, but you never thought of keeping them. Why? Well, I can't fault you. I guess I'm pretty much the same. I've kept a few of them, but I don't really get into it. And it's the old grass is greener on the other side of the fence. That weird catfish from Africa, well, it's different. It's got a little mystique about it, I guess. But make no bones about this, the European hobbyist is really into our fish. They love our sunfish. For instance, like this guy here, And there's a pair of them here. I just put them together. And this is Lipomus humilis, the orange stripe. Look at the colors in that male. And it looks like I'm going to have to separate him again. He's starting to chew her up a little. But they love our sunfish. And there are other fish that we have that are natives that they really like and they're very interested in keeping. Now we're seeing some typical nuptial behavior, if you will. Not unlike our cichlids, as you notice. Think cichlids if you're keeping a sunfish. I've got some shiners over here that we ought to take a look at. Sturba, in one of his books, when he talks about these fish, and this is a Notropus species, and when he talks about the Notropus, he says, catch more of them, learn to breed them. They're in high demand in Europe. So although we might not think too much of the fish from our country, other countries do. Now, when I say native fish, what does that mean? What kind of fish are we talking about? That's a big one. That's a big one, and it would be awful difficult to try to assess it. I'm going to tackle it this way, in a frame of reference compared to the hobby as we know it. For instance, are there any native tetras? No. No, we've got some very close. Mexico has a couple, the blind cave fish, as we all know it. How about barbs? Well, we don't have any barbs, but we've got some barb types. Now, we saw one of these shiners, the minnows, fish like that. These fish in here, which again are Notropus. This is the lutrensis, this beautiful blue, light blue shade one, got a lot of red in it. That's a barb-like fish, has barbels. There's some other fish in here. There are a couple of goldfish that I put in. That's a fish that's all over this country by now, but it's not a native fish. Remember when we talked about the old goldfish, they came from Europe and Asia originally. But no barbs, but some barb-like cousins. Cichlids, we've got one cichlid, and we've seen the Texas cichlid a number of times. So no other cichlids, but if we step up a little higher than the family level, up into the order, in the scientific sense now, we come to the order which includes many of our game fish. And we're going to be looking at some of those. So we got some cousins of the cichlids, if you will. How about toothed cyprinidones? What did he say? Toothed cyprinidones. That's our live bearers and our killifish. Yeah, we've got those. No question about it. Live bearers, we said, were American fish to begin with, so it doesn't surprise us to find mollies and swordtails and that in this country. We've got some beautiful killifish. I've got a couple different kinds in these aquariums. We normally think of the killies as being African and South American, and we sort of tend to limit ourselves to those. When you look at some of the fundulas that are in this tank, and this big fellow, very bold patterns. This is the fundulus, chrysotis, and there's a smaller cousin of these in here. But these fish, very attractive with their brilliant markings on them. So yeah, and there's a stickleback in the picture, ducking down to the bottom. Yeah, we've got some toothed cyprinidones. And catfish, you betcha. If you've ever been fishing, you know we got catfish. Not all like this guy. Here's one of the channel cats. This is Ictalurus lacustris, and old Whitey's been around here a while, and quite large, as you can see by my hand. Now, this guy is rather similar to some of the bullheads that we think of. A big difference in him is the tail. His tail is quite deeply forked, as you can see, and the regular catfish have a square, cut-off tail on the end. But, yeah, we've got a lot of catfish. Not too beautiful, most of them. There's another guy that's all over the world, and North America has its share of them, the old garpike. Get down there, will you? My friend, don't bite me, just move down. Attaboy. There's a beautiful fish, and this is a Leposoistes productus. And this guy, now you look at his mouth, and you can see a long, big mouth and a lot of teeth. And he is not going to eat crackers. So we can make a generalization about all of the native fish right here. Before you go out and indiscriminately start catching fish, know what their diet is, or they're not going to live. And you've done an irreparable harm by stripping some stream if you're greedy. So, keep native fish beautiful. And maybe at this point, I'll read this address that I promised you. This is North American Native Fish Association, NANFA. NANFA. 1144 Everett Avenue, Oakland, California. The zip is 94602. Now, real quick again now. NANFA, N-A-N-F-A, 1144 Everett Avenue, Oakland, California, 94602. And you'll get involved in a different aspect of the hobby. These guys put out a monthly, and they'll give you some strong running rules about collecting natives. And we're going to talk about those more toward the end. But know how to feed these guys or we're going to be in trouble. Now, we talked a little bit about the cousins of the cichlids. And I've got them here. I got a lot of different kinds. I'm no pro on this. I admit to that. So what did I do? I got a pro. I brought one along. And I'd like you to meet at this time Jim Bashline. Jim?
Hi, Paul.
Welcome to Guppies the Groupers.
Thank you. Very, very glad to be here.
Now, if I read you Jim's credits, it would take the rest of the show. So let me give you a couple of highlights.
I'll just read a few of them, will you please,
Read the
Paul?
good ones?
I love them, yeah.
Read the good ones. Outdoor columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Northeastern editor for Field and Stream, travel editor for Fly Fisherman, all names that you've heard before. And I guess, as I find out on the back, you've been on TV before. Is that right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did a show for public television a couple of years back.
Pennsylvania.
Right, uh-huh.
So you're no stranger to this.
No, not to public television.
So if I walk off now, you just go right on and on?
I'd try, but I wouldn't get near the ICSI, what was that last one? No, I wouldn't touch that with an 11-foot pole, but I'll stick rather close to the trout over here because I understand those.
Oh, don't give me that. I heard you talking about the triggerfish.
The queen trigger, yeah, I did recognize that fish because I had the good fortune to catch via hook and line a number of those down in the Bahamas.
And you ate them.
Well,
you hear that, hobbyists?
I'm awfully sorry, but the queen trigger fish is rather tasty.
Is it
but some of these were rather large, 5 up to 7 or 8 pounds.
Yeah, bigger than what I've got there. Huh?
Yeah, and they do bite. They do bite.
Saltwater fish is not your bag.
Not really. No, not as far as keeping them in the home.
Let's go over and take a look at something that
Sure.
you're more familiar with, huh?
Sure. I looked at these guys on the way in here. They're very handsome, and you've got just about every common species of trout in there, and one that's kind of unusual too. I think probably the best way, if they're not going to attack me, and I don't think they will, if they don't get out of the tank, I think we can reach down in there and kind of point out some of these.
Just don't put it in your pocket when you get done.
We got to move a little slowly here. Well, this guy that I'm creeping up on right here, there we got him.
Beautiful.
That's a brook trout there. That's the eastern brook trout.
Uh-huh.
This is also a brookie too that just came into the picture here. You see the white edge on the fins.
Oh, that's
He just passed over my hand. Now this guy, let's see now. This guy right down here in the bottom. I think I just got my sleeve wet.
No extra charge.
This guy right down here in the bottom that I'm reaching for. This is brown trout. This is a true trout.
You know, I noticed one day.
Salmo trutta. He didn't like that too much.
He didn't like that.
He's not as cooperative.
Well, I noticed when they caught these, Jim, at the Fish Commission, and let me say right now that I've got to pat the Pennsylvania Fish Commission on the back because they gave me these specimens.
Here's a rainbow. Excuse me, Paul. This is a rainbow right down here. This one right there in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
And the light colored ones, the yellowish gold ones.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't want to stay put. Here's one that will.
A little nervous.
Well,
huh?
that's a palomino. This one right here, that's a palomino.
Oh, yeah.
That's a rainbow hybrid. They just breed back light fish
Are they
until they. Yes, they are. Well, I shouldn't say they are. Some of them are.
Because some hybrids are sterile.
They certainly are.
But you know what amazed me here with your reaching in and putting your hand so close to those fish? I can remember when these guys caught them at the commission. Let me see now if I can get this straight. The palominos and the rainbows, he walked up with a net and caught them. No problem. But the browns and the brookies, he couldn't catch them. 2 guys got in this big long pen and walked toward each other.
Well, the brown trout is pretty much considered by the fly fisherman, the guy that's out there trying to suggest natural insects with his little furred and feathered creations. A brown trout is considered to be the hot shot of the trout. He's supposed to have a little more gray matter and thinks a little more about what he's doing. If in fact fish can think as we know it.
I was going to ask you that one. I was going to, let me ask you this. When you go out fishing, and finally after an hour, you pull out that big one that you've been after, do you think of that as, you outwitted him? I mean, as opposed to, well, he got a little hungry or something?
Well, yeah, sometimes I do. It depends a great deal on the situation. If you're in native water, that is water where man hasn't had much of an impact, and the fish you're fishing for are pure native strain fish, quite honestly, they're kind of stupid as far as being around man is concerned. They won't run and dart, and they're apt to take some of the most outlandish looking lures. However, you get into a situation like, say, the limestone country of south central Pennsylvania is a good example. There are some streams like that in Maryland, too, and out west, where the water is very, very clear. And those fish are used to seeing human beings walk along the bank because they can spot them. And your fly, the lure that you use to suggest a natural insect, has to really duplicate nature very, very closely. It's got to approximate the size, color, and silhouette, or the brown trout says, forget it.
I see.
Rainbows and brookies can become, well, again, more intelligent in quotes.
Yeah, that's what I've always said.
Yeah, but the brown trout, he's the Einstein of the trout group.
I see. So if you're going to go out fishing, and by the way, I say I didn't catch these, Well, they caught them for me with a net.
Yeah, these brookies look like they have a little hatchery strain in them. All right, they certainly are native fish. I wouldn't guess them to be anyway.
No. Let me look at something here. Let's see what we're holding. Well, this is just creeping up on 60. Is that a problem?
No, a trout can manage in 60 okay as long as they have plenty of oxygen.
Oh.
Ideally, now here I'm going to give you the dickens on your own show. Ideally, it probably ought to be a couple degrees lower. And for the benefit of anyone out there who wants to keep trout in the house, it should be perhaps down to 56, 57.
55 is what I shot for.
Yeah, well, 55 is fine,
Well,
sure.
I'm
sure the lights here affect them just a little bit.
By the way, this unit that we're looking at here is a refrigeration, circulation, filtration unit. And it's got a big pump inside the housing here, and that does the work here. And, of course, we're working under a lot of lights overhead, so the temperature goes up.
I believe you told me, Paul, didn't you, that you got these fish courtesy of the PA Fish Commission, wasn't that right?
Fish Commission, right. So they guys did a job for me, and I think at that time they told me about 55 degrees is what they were running. So we shot for that, so that the transfer would be easy to make.
Yeah, I think 55 is a real good temperature to hold.
Let's take a look at some fish other than trout. Do you recognize any of these?
You got a Duke's mixture of freshwater fish in there. Now, some of these fish, as far as the fishermen are concerned, they do call them warm water species. However, they're not really. Yeah. They can exist in very, very cold water. That looks like a pumpkin seed sunfish right there. Yeah.
We'll give him a little
you
broadside.
can see the little coloration on his gill covers there, the little tabs. Yeah, that's typical pumpkin seed. That's what the farm boys all like to fish for in the farm ponds. And then, let's see, right down here, this looks like a big black crappie. Yeah, that's a crappie.
Well, it looks almost like our cichlids, you know what? I mean, well, of course.
Well, he's got the spiny rays up on top there, and I thought he might flash him up there when I grabbed him too quickly, but he's going to be pretty docile.
Yeah.
That's a crappie. Here's a walleye down here in the bottom, walleyed pike. I got him right
by that up front?
I got him right by the, well, here's another walleye. Here's one. I got him right in my hand now. He doesn't like that too much.
You don't like that handling, huh?
And we've got out there in the front that big fella. If we can get him. Let's see if we can track him down.
Well, let me move by you. You can track him
down. There you go. That's a good shot. You can see that lateral dark stripe on. That's a largemouth bass. Huh? Yeah. The smallmouth bass, as opposed to that, the identifying characteristic are the bars instead of the long black line.
Jim, everybody watching knows what this is.
You pulled the towel out before.
I'm always soaking wet, so I got to use the towel.
Well, I think if you're going to be in the fish business, you're going to have to get wet.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences with us.
My pleasure, Paul. Anytime there's fish involved, it's a lot of fun.
Yes, it is. Nice talking to you.
And I hate to have to apologize to people out there, but I do catch fish every once in a while. By hook and line, yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Been a pleasure. Jim Bashline. Thank you very much, Jim. Now, before you get the impression that every fish that we look at and we say it's a native fish gets that big, I'd like to show you some fish that don't get that big. In fact, some fish that have the name pygmy appended to their common names. And these are fish. These first three are sunfish of sorts. And some of these scientific names tell you right where they come from, just like this guy. This is Elosoma evergladi, and I guess that specific name tells you where he's from the Everglades. But a nice little fish, rich in color, very metallic, spangles, and going to make a nice aquarium pet. And of course, you don't need a big aquarium to keep fish this size. He's going to stay small. Now, I might say, with respect to this aspect of it, before you run out with your bucket and net and decide to catch these fish that we're looking at, say, oh boy, I got to get them, that's something new. You got to think about a few common sense running rules that might not occur to you. First of all, check the local fish commission. Find out what the rules are about catching native fish. A lot of fish are on the endangered fish list, endangered species, for many reasons. Man, in his way, civilization has encroached on the normal ecological niche of these fish and done them in. So we find fish decreasing in numbers. So fish show up on what is called the endangered species list. When that happens, there are a lot of times stiff fines for catching these fish. So know what you're doing. Well, you can just spend a whole afternoon out there, catch a couple of beautiful little perch, take them home. You know, in your mind's eye, you can see them popping into that aquarium. Beautiful addition. You get the tap on the shoulder, says, what do you got in the bucket? Guy's got a badge on and a hat. You say, I got a couple perch. Say, good. I hope they're over 10 inches long or you're going to go to jail for 15 years. You can avoid all the agony by checking the rules first. Very simple. Some more beautiful little sunfish. Look at the colors. Look at that banding. And this again is an Elosoma. This is zonatum. And you can see that zone in the name there. And of course, they want to get at each other. Some of these sunfish are aggressive despite their size. And as I said with some of the other ones, think cichlid and you won't be far off with these guys. I've seen sunfish spawning in waters out at one of the local camps that I'm connected with, a boys' camp. And they make a nest in the sand in the bottom, not unlike the tilapia do. Hollow out a big crater, the male gets in there and guards it. Females show up, he invites them in, that kind of thing. Think cichlid. Another pygmy sunfish, a wee little guy, Elosoma okefenokee. And again, we don't have to say where that guy comes from. There's the old swamp, a little Florida fish of some sort. And next to him, we've got first of a couple of killifish. And this is a fundulus, again, confluentus. We find a lot of fundulus. As I said, not all the beautiful killies. Now, maybe I can get that guy to turn a little bit. There, we got some movement out of him. Look at that. There, I got him turned around a little bit. You see beautiful markings. Nice addition. And these fish are easy to spawn. So you want to get them home, you want to try spawning them. But again, as I said, make sure that you know what you're doing before you get involved. There's some other things you might consider. Be ready when you go to get these fish. Take equipment to handle them, catch them. Be ready for yourself. Take an extra pair of shoes because you're going to get doused. You know that by the time you get done. And for the love of Mike, if a fish outgrows you or outgrows your liking, don't dump it into some stream indiscriminately. If you caught it 50 miles from home, don't put it in a local creek. If a fish does not have a natural enemy in the water it ends up in, it starts to overrun things. The balance is taken care of by nature. If we upset that balance, suddenly something starts decreasing, and that's when it gets on the endangered species list. We're talking the other day with some guys about the tilapia being introduced into some California lakes. Tilapia, you recall, are mouth brooders, very prolific. Their baby tilapias share the same niche as some of the desert pupfish. And almost all of the pupfish are on the endangered species list right now. This tilapia is slowly replacing the pupfish. So we've got to guard against this thing. I was at the St. Louis show a couple of weeks ago, and a young boy, Rick, 16 years old, he told me, in the Tank Beautiful competition, entered a tank full of native fish, Missouri fish, and won an award. And was he tickled? But the greatest part about it is one of the real old pros, one of the best cichlid men around, fell in love with those native fish. I think he's got a new adventure. And he swapped Rick for his native fish. Are you ready for this, cichlid lovers? About 8 or 10 baby, inch-long Juliodrochromis. And somebody said to Rick, Rick, you're not going to give those beautiful fish up, are you? He said, sure, I'll go out and catch some more. Native fish, beautiful. Down at the end here, we've got another small fish. Look at this one. Now, doesn't this look like our white cloud? This is Leptoleucania amata. But look at the colors, how much it looks like our white cloud. But another killifish, just a little different genus. And next door to them, a live bearer, the old mosquito fish that's been around forever. And this is Heterandria formosa. So a great collection of small fish, a great collection of large fish. You keep what you want, but remember, be ready to take care of them when you get them home. Know their feeding habits. Do not dump them out. That's very important. Okay, now I want to make sure I took care of all the credits. I thank the Fish Commission for their contribution. That's a biggie. Okay, I make sure of that one. Now, these fish, these native fish, provide us with some beautiful additions to the aquarium. There's no question about that. You know, we talk about the saltwater fish, and somebody say, well, they're twice as expensive as the freshwater fish. How about free? Not a bad fish to keep, free. But keep them with some thought. Okay? Little thought. Don't forget that until we get together next time, I want you to keep in mind what I asked you at the beginning. Soon as this is over, sit down, give me that letter. You owe me. I want to know what your first preference is for best tropical fish